Hey guys, James from Garibaldi Bushcraft here. I'm going to do a video for you guys today on Devil's Club, which is a plant that grows all across North America. It's primarily found in areas that are close to water, and so if you're looking to track it down, that's your first bet, is to find a river source or a water source, and wet kind of marshland areas it seems to grow most abundantly through there. Devil's Club is a medicinal plant that is in the ginseng family, and so it's sort of a cure-all for lots of different ailments, and I'll go into the various things that you can use it for, and how it can be applied and how you can drink it as a tea. And so in this video I'm going to go into how to identify Devil's Club, how to process Devil's Club, and how to turn it into either a poultice or a tea. So as you can see behind me, that's sort of the highlighted plant that I've got. That's a Devil's Club plant, and I'm going to show you how to identify it. So it's late fall right now, and so Devil's Club isn't fully in bloom. It's past the point where it's going to have large kind of maple type leaves that are growing off of it. So this is one of the few that I've found around here that actually have leaves on them. It's got medicinal properties all through the seasons, and it's going to have a stalk that you can harvest and roots that you can harvest any season, but it tends to be the most potent in sort of early spring. That's when the sap is flowing and you get the most nutritional value out of it, but at this point it's still perfectly legible to harvest it for medicinal purposes. So Devil's Club grows as sort of a vine near a water source. It tends to be more of a weed that takes over areas, and so you'll see large amounts of it everywhere. Like we've got Devil's Club here, as you can see off in the distance, the sort of the later orange over there, and then there's a copious amount of Devil's Club all around here that's just stalks that are coming up. So you can pretty much harvest any of them, but I'm just using this as a reference so that you have at least a little bit of leaf to identify. So when you're looking for a Devil's Club, the first thing usually that you'll see are these large maple-like leaves. They're very similar to a maple leaf. The difference between this and a maple leaf is on the underside of it. It's got a series of spines that runs down the main stem of the leaf. Pretty much all the way around it. So if you're hiking and you're looking, you want to make sure that you're not grabbing the leaf to identify it super hard, because it does have spines in it that will get you. Also, the main stalk of Devil's Club is sort of got the most prominent spines in it. So this is the Devil's Club stalk, and as you can see, it's got spines that run all the way along the stalk. It seems to be that plants that have the most medicinal properties have a way of defending themselves, and so this is a perfect example of that. The Devil's Club stalk has got lots of spines, and lots of hikers that will be around Devil's Club areas will probably have stories of either being bit by them or being grabbing onto them thinking that it's just a vine, and you get stung pretty well by them. Now they do have a bit of a toxin in the spines themselves, and so you can grab them lightly and you won't get stuck, but if you grab it by your hand and squeeze in, quite often you're going to get these spines in you, and they tend to snap off, and you won't really notice it that day, but the day later they'll be in you and you'll start to get swelling, and you sort of either have to pop them like a zit almost to get them out of your finger, or dig them out with a needle or a knife or something like that to get them out. So when you're harvesting Devil's Club, you want to be very careful as to how you do it so that you don't get a lot of them in your hands. You can either wear gloves to properly harvest it, or you can just be really careful in how you handle it so you don't get stuck by all these spines. So like I mentioned before, Devil's Club is a member of the ginseng family, and so it's super beneficial to you to drink as a tea, which is how I generally will harvest it to utilize it. And what you're actually harvesting is the inner root bark, which you scrape off the external spines and the outer gray bark with the back of your knife, and then you're scraping off the inner root bark, which then you will shred up and then turn into a tea. Devil's Club is antibacterial, it's antifungal, it is extremely good for regulating your blood glucose levels, and so it's been known to be used for people that have diabetes and or people that have insulin-resistant diabetes to help regulate their blood sugar levels. If you're in a survival situation, Devil's Club can be used as a source of suppressing hunger. So if you're starving in the forest and you don't have a food source, but you need to keep a clear head, which is a main reason that a lot of people will die in the forest, is because they're starving, their brain isn't functioning the way that it need to. All you need to do, find some Devil's Club, make a tea, and that'll give you some vitamins and supplements for keeping your body going, but also it will help suppress the hunger so you can keep a clear head, think about where you need to go, think about what you need to do to survive. In the spring, another way to help identify Devil's Club is it will have the wide maple leaf leaves that are coming off from it, but it will also have a primary shoot that comes out from the top that has a cluster of red berries that grows out of the top of it, very similar to this picture here. And with that, it helps to identify it as Devil's Club. If you see those, that's very distinctive red berry cluster, that'll definitely be a Devil's Club plant. The berries on the Devil's Club aren't edible. They are poisonous, so you don't want to eat the berries. Indigenous people would use the berries. They used it, generally they would mash it up and use it in their hair. It helps put essential oils back into their hair, and also if they had lice or something like that, it would help to kill the lice. So that's sort of the primary reason that they would utilize the berries off of the Devil's Club plant. So this is generally how I harvest Devil's Club. This here is a stalk of Devil's Club that's growing out of a stump that doesn't have any of the predominant leaves on it, but you can identify it just by the spikes that are growing out from it. And once you see it enough, you tend to be able to identify it easily. So when I'm harvesting Devil's Club, usually I'll just take my knife and chop it in whatever increments that I need it to be, just like a machete, and then I can work with the piece that's got the spikes on it. When it's on the ground, it makes it a lot easier to work than try and break it off of the main body of the Devil's Club itself. So for demonstration, I'm just going to chop off a 2-foot section of it and work with that. You can harvest as much of it as you need. It's not something that you need to worry about taking away from, because it grows like a weed, and you can take pretty much as you want, and it's just going to continue to replenish itself. And you're only really taking a few feet off from it, and so it's just going to continue to grow off from where you're cutting it down. So with this, I'm going to cut her down at about 1.5 to 2 foot increment. So I'm just going to give it a chop, and just cuts it off clean like this. And then I've got a stalk of Devil's Club to work with sitting on the ground here. So generally what I'll do now that I've got that chop and I've got a semi-grabbable section here, I'm just going to lightly grab that section with my finger. And now I've got the piece and I'm not being stuck by all these spines, and then I can work from it from that point. Now the first step with Devil's Club, what you're going to want to do is set up a little area about 2 inches long at the bottom that you can comfortably grab, and you're not going to be stuck by all the spines, so that you can continue to process the rest of the plant. So with that, you're just going to take your knife and just scrape off the outer brown bark, which contains all of the spines, and you're left with the inner green bark, which is the part of the Devil's Club plant that you're actually going to want to process. And so I cleared just a little section where I'm grabbing my fingers to hold the plant so that I'm not being stuck while I'm doing this. But once you get the end all cleaned up, then you've got a nice handle to hold on to the rest of the plant to prevent yourself from being stung. So now I can flip it over, and I've got the end firmly held, so I don't have to worry about being stuck, and then I can continue to process the plant. And you're just taking the side of your knife and just gently scraping off the brown outer bark, which gets rid of all the spikes and makes it pretty much down to what you need to utilize from it. And it's got a super pungent aroma. As soon as you cut this plant, you can smell it, and it smells extremely medicinal. Most people enjoy the smell of Devil's Club and the taste of Devil's Club tea. It's quite rare that I encounter somebody that doesn't like the taste of it, but it's definitely a strong aroma that is emitted when you cut and when you process this plant. So I'll save you the tedium of me processing this whole stalk, so I'll cut scene and I'll give it to you guys when I've got this thing all cleaned up. Alright, so now I've got all of the external bark taken off from the Devil's Club, so now it's just a stalk with the green inner bark, which is the part of the plant that you're going to want to actually process. And so from this point, all you need to do is basically the same thing that you were doing before, except you're going to be pressing harder with the edge of your knife and just stripping off that inner bark, which is going to leave you with what you're going to actually be processing as a tea. And so you just take it right down to the hard wood that's on the inside of the Devil's Club, and this inner bark, the green inner bark, is what you're going to be making the tea out of. And so you're just working your way up the Devil's Club chute and just stripping off all that inner bark. And from that, you can pretty much just take that inner bark, shred it up a little bit more if you want to, or you can just leave it the larger chunks that it is, put it in a pot, and you've got yourself Devil's Club tea. Hey guys, hopefully this video was informative. I always appreciate your comments and subscriptions, and I'm going to have another one for you next week. Cheers.